conference. My name is Seitis and I'm here with my colleague Kate Winfield to host today's session. Before we start off with the introduction, as with the previous talks, so if you have any questions, please pop them in that box and we will get around to them as we can. On today's panel, we are joined by Alia Ardron, a former Aerospace employee, Alex Davidson and Chris Parmenter, current Aerospace colleagues, and John Chinner from Airbus. Now, if we could go round and briefly introduce ourselves, so I can start it off. As I said, my name is Taya. I did an integrated Masters of Geological Sciences at the University of Leeds, with a focus in astronomy during my 3rd and 4th years. From there, I took a year out where I applied for the graduate scheme at STFC, which ultimately landed me my role as a graduate project manager at Aerospace. From there, I'm now in my 2nd year on the scheme. So I'm currently working on the Punch and Harmony projects as the project manager. I've always had an interest in the space industry, growing up and completely absorbing anything related to space in the media, particularly enjoying spacecraft launches, any documentaries, books and films related to space. And I hadn't even heard of Aerospace until I began looking for employment opportunities after leaving university. There's not a lot of focus on other careers outside of engineering or science when entering the space industry, especially as a child or teenager looking up to those sorts of careers. So project management is not something I'd ever really looked into beforehand. It's been really interesting gaining first-hand experience in the collaboration between the technical and non-technical sides of projects. So that's an aspect of my job that I really enjoy. So that's a bit about me. Kate, if you'd like to go next.
Hello, my name is Kate and I did a BSc degree in physical geography at Coventry University. During my degree, I did a placement years at Aerospace as an assistant atmospheric data scientist. And then during my final year of uni, I applied for a graduate post as an environmental data scientist in Aerospace. So I've now been at Aerospace for about 4 years, where I support and influence the data management for NERC-funded projects. So these are projects funded by the Natural Environmental Research Council and other general science projects, one of which is the ESA's Climate Change Initiative. Currently, I'm actually focused on archiving the data for the last IPCC report from the International Climate Change report that was just released in August. And I'm just currently archiving all those data figures into the CEDA archive. I've always had an interest in space and from the environment from a young age. I also didn't know that Aerospace was an organisation until I was looking around and wrote a letter to see if I could go on to have a placement year. So I'm going to go pass on to Chris now. And Chris, can you introduce yourself, please?
Yeah, sure thing. So yeah, hi everybody. So yeah, my name's Chris. So I'm an electronics engineer here at Aerospace. So I work in the imaging systems division really, and the kind of stuff that we do is mainly build cameras and other instrumentation for space. So the most famous projects that the people in my team have worked on are probably SDO, so that's the Solar Dynamics Observatory, which had its 10th anniversary just last year, and then Rosetta. So that was probably, well, we're talking six-ish years ago now, I think it was, where ESA obviously landed on the comet, the first landing on a comet ever, which was a pretty big milestone. So in terms of getting into the industry, like I said, well, I started way back when. I basically did a pretty traditional route, to be honest. I started doing A-levels in double maths physics, and then I applied to do an engineering degree. So I studied at Cambridge, so that meant I did 2 years of general engineering, and then later specialised in electrical and electronic engineering. So that's what my master's was in. Throughout my degree, I did some summer placements. A couple of those were at Aerospace. So basically, once I got a taste for the kind of work that we do at Aerospace, clearly, clearly just kept on bouncing back really. So then at the end of my degree, I applied for a full-time position on the graduate scheme. So started back, it was back in 2017 now, so a few years ago. And yeah, since then I've worked on some really interesting projects. So the first one I worked on was an R&D type project, where we're looking at basically some new quantum physics techniques, basically, to do some really cool things, which I'll talk a bit more about later on, because I could talk about that for way more than 3 minutes or so. And yeah, so that was a really cool R&D project. And then after that, I've been working on actual flight projects. So Taya mentioned the Punch project, so I'm also working on the Punch project. And my other main project is Lagrange as well. So for both of those, we're building some camera electronics in both applications, which will be observing the sun. So yeah, apart from kind of the day job, which I've spoken about a bit, I'm quite keen on doing outreach. It's something I really enjoy, and I think it's really important, and something that I think you might hear a bit more later on. Is something really encouraged in the space industry, especially. And just another point as well, I'm actively working towards gaining chartered engineering status. So yeah, that's me really.
Thank you, Chris. Alia, you're up next.
Hi, I'm Alia Ardron. So I started in chemical engineering. I did natural sciences chemical engineering via natural sciences at Cambridge, and then worked for 6 years in equipment design and manufacturing in various different industries, and then realized that I was never going to get over my childhood dream of working in the space industry. So I went back to Cranfield University last year and did a 1-year master's in astronautics and space engineering, which I absolutely loved. And it included a placement at Aerospace, where I was doing some thermal modeling for the aerial mission. And then I recently moved to Texas to join SpaceX at their test facility. So I'm now working as a test operations engineer on the Falcon 9 and Falcon Heavy rockets. And yeah, it's amazing. We have engine tests and rocket tests all the time on site, and super fun.
That's great, Alia. Thank you. If you'd, sorry, John, if you'd like to introduce yourself next.
Yeah, hello everyone. I'm John Chinner, and I'm joining you here from my home office. This is not what the offices look like in Airbus Defence and Space. So I'm a principal electrical engineer with Airbus Defence and Space. You might have heard of us. We're part of a bigger organisation called Airbus, who build lots of commercial aeroplanes. So Airbus Defence and Space is the largest space company in Europe, and we're an integral part of the £15 billion UK space sector. We've done really great high-profile projects, things like the ExoMars rover. We led the development of the ExoMars rover for ESA, designed, built and launched the Solar Orbiter spacecraft that's just done an Earth flyby. It's going to go and study the sun. And also doing some things with renewables with regards to space harpoons and satellites to bring other satellites down from orbit. I'm an ex-apprentice, so I feel really old, but I did my apprenticeship from 1999 to 2002 and worked for 10 years with the MOD, and then realized that I was a raging space nerd and I ought to really be working in the space industry. So I moved across to work for what was then Astrium, which has now become Airbus Defence and Space. And I spent 10 years as an electrical engineer, and now I work in what's called the Engineering Academy, and we look to see what skills are needed in our company in the space sector in the next 5 to 10 years and make sure that we've got the engineers that we need. And this feeds in greatly to my other passion for outreach, to make sure that young people are interested in space careers as well and want to come and join us.
That's great. Thank you so much, John. Now, finally, we have Alex.
Hi there, I'm Alex. So I come from a completely different background to anyone else on this call. So I studied ancient history at university. I did my bachelor's at Birmingham and then my master's at Leiden in the Netherlands. And I specialized in ancient Syria 3,500 years ago. So quite easy to think that there's not actually any transferable skills there, but I actually found there were quite a few. So whilst I was in the Netherlands, I met somebody who, we became good friends, and he worked for STFC, which is a branch off of ESA. This meant that he could actually talk me through some of the job roles in the space industry, and being in the space industry was something that I'd always thought would be amazing to do from when I was a really young child, but I thought it was never going to work because I had studied the wrong thing at university. He taught me through all of those different job roles, and I actually found that product assurance was something that I thought I'd be quite good at. I'm now the product assurance group leader at Aerospace, which is it's a group of 10 people, and we make sure that all of the contracts are completed for both the customer side and our side, so that everything is done exactly how we want it to, and to make sure that everything that goes into space is actually going to work for the time that it's up there. It's not like a car or a bicycle that you can service once a year. This is something that when it goes up there, it has to work the entire time. Otherwise, there could be mission over if it's an integral part of the spacecraft.
That's great. Thank you very much, Alex. So thank you all for your short introductions. Alia, just picking up on what you said about working at SpaceX, what are the employment opportunities for non-US citizens at SpaceX? What was the application process like for you?
So actually, I have the fortune of being UK and US citizen. So because of the government rules in the US for space and defense stuff, you do have to have the right to work in the US. So yeah, I had luck there on my side, but I mean, obviously there's loads of other space companies that are super interesting in the UK and Europe, and also I possibly, if you get high enough in the space industry, I don't know if there's a way of getting some kind of sponsorship to become, you know, to get that permission to work in the US. But yeah, because of the government rules, ITAR and stuff, you do have to have the right to work in the US.
Okay, thank you for answering that. And just a bit more on SpaceX. So what are the early careers opportunities offered by them like?
So there are placements that people can do. Quite a few people do a placement while they're at university. And then afterwards, they do hire graduates straight out of university, and also people who have had some experience, not necessarily in the space industry. But so I didn't, apart from the summer placement that I'd done with Aerospace, I didn't have years of work experience or anything in the space industry, and that was fine with them. They want to see how you think, how you're going to approach problems. And so, yeah, even as a graduate or even before that, during university, they have opportunities.
Great, thank you, Alia. So another question for John. So we discussed previously some of the early careers entries into the space industry with regards to Aerospace. So it's been mentioned, we've got the apprenticeship scheme and the graduate scheme. What are the possible entryways for Airbus Space?
Well, you won't be surprised to hear it's very similar. Entry points into Airbus Defence and Space broadly fit into three categories. So direct entry, so you can join directly, apprenticeships and graduate schemes. And we also have internships. Now, we're quite fortunate as a division of the bigger Airbus company that all of these positions are advertised through a common Airbus careers website. So even if you're really interested in space, you actually get exposure and visibility of all the other career options available in the bigger Airbus. And actually, for example, in defence and space, we take on about 12 apprentices a year. But in the bigger Airbus and in sites that we've got in the UK, depending on the market, they could be taking upwards of 100 apprentices. So it's actually definitely something to look at. It's not just to look at the space side of things, but actually the whole aerospace manufacturing of Airbus in the UK is considerably larger than defence and space. But if you're dead keen on coming and joining defence and space, then those opportunities are available to you, and they're all placed through the airbus.com/careers site.
Great, thank you. So another question for Alex. You studied ancient history at university. Can you tell us a bit more about your route into the space industry and what skills from your degree to you were most useful as your current role as group leader for product assurance?
Yeah, absolutely. So, as I said, I met somebody whilst I was studying in the Netherlands, and he has over 20 years experience in the space industry. So he could give me a really great overview of what each of the job roles entailed. And I found that a huge part of my skill set was about research, independent learning, and being able to sift through huge amounts of information and pull out tiny details that didn't quite align or were incorrect, and being able to find out exactly what the correct information was, and being able to bring that back to the table and explain that to large groups of people that hadn't gone and read all that information, and they could distill that, understand it, and actually put that information into the mission or the project that we're working on. It was a really useful skill set. As at university, I was reading about 6 books a week, so huge amounts of information each week. Luckily, I don't have to read quite that much at the moment for the space industry, but it is quite a lot of information I have to go through. And I absolutely love that. I love being able to use that skill set into the space industry and really complex material, being able to get my teeth stuck into that, go away, research the bits I don't know yet, get a really good understanding of it, and then bring that back to the table and give my view on it. Because if everybody had the same degree from the same university, we could quite easily get stuck on a lot of projects. So having somebody that has a different perspective can actually be a really great point. And I might ask the simplest question there's ever been, but it's something that nobody's thought of because everyone else around the table is so intelligent, they've just missed that.
Yeah, I think you raise a really interesting point. I do find with having a background in geology, it's not very applicable in the sector that I'm working in. Although we did just have the talk from Samuel talking about the analogues. But yes, that's really encouraging to hear. And I think it's really encouraging for people that do have a different background and want to get into the space industry. It is entirely possible. Like you said, you've done it. So I think that can really inspire some people. So thank you for that, Alex. A question for you, Chris. You previously said that you've been really involved with outreach activities at Aerospace. Could you tell us a bit more about some of the ones you've been involved in or any of the ones that you're currently working on?
Yeah, sure. So typically I've done, tours and things with the department. I've done talks in schools, run workshops, those kind of things. And they're always great fun. But I guess there's two kind of real main ones, I think, that I've done that really stick out in my mind. So the first one is taking part in an online challenge called I'm an Engineer, Get Me Out of Here. So there's a few different ones, different disciplines, scientists, I can't remember what there's all sorts, data scientists. I'm sure the panel knows about them as well. So I took part in one of those competitions. It really stuck out. Basically what you do is for the period of 2 weeks, you take part in some online chat rooms basically, and take part in a lot of online forums as well, where there's students of varying ages get to just ask you questions about anything and everything. Some are job related, some are not, but it's great fun and really kind of engaging with young people to try and really encourage them to follow a career in the sector. That was great fun. But probably the biggest kind of outreach project that I've been involved in is creating a challenge badge, so to speak, a career challenge based around science and engineering careers at STFC. So it's aimed at scout and girl guiding groups. There's a small team of us who've worked on it. Kate was the leader of that team. I know Tay, you obviously joined that team as well now. So it's really exciting to get involved with that. So we created an entire challenge pack and created a badge design and those kind of things, and then rolled the challenge pack out there. And it went pretty viral, I think, is the only word for it. It just grew and grew and grew. And I think we definitely had over 10,000 completions now. That was the last I knew. Who knows, the figures could be even higher. Over the last couple of months, we've still got people completing the challenge. so yeah, it's absolutely great. It's a really rewarding project to be involved with, and it's still ongoing. So we're currently updating our challenge pack and hopefully helping it grow even further. So yeah, I'm really excited for that and what it brings.
That's great. Thank you, Chris. So some of these opportunities, did you have to go and look for them, or were they made available to you? How did you get into them?
Is this in terms of outreach specifically?
Yeah.
Or so yeah, there's a real mixture really. So I'm a STEM ambassador as well. So I've definitely done some outreach activities. I found those through the kind of STEMnet website. If you log onto their website, if you're an ambassador, you go on and there's this lists and lists of activities where teachers are requesting STEM ambassadors, basically. And then the other kind of main source really is at RAL as well. STFC has its own outreach teams dedicated to each site. And if you're a STEM ambassador or if you're just interested in outreach, you can get added to their mailing lists, and then they share opportunities that they get with different various activities. And then, yeah, if you like the sound of one of them, then you can put your name forward and volunteer. So it's on that as well. There was another outreach kind of network that I'm involved with, is the Social Mobility Foundation as well. So through that I'm a volunteer mentor, so I help mentor a few students now over the years from lower socioeconomic backgrounds who wouldn't necessarily have access to opportunities and access to these kinds of forums really, to learn about different routes into space, but obviously wider STEM careers as well. So yeah, I found out about that through STFC initially, but that's kind of run away with its own thing, and now with a separate organisation, I've got access to extra opportunities there too.
Great, nice hearing that, Chris. So our next question is for John, and we've had this from the audience. So you mentioned that Airbus is looking for engineers that can cover a particular set of skills needed by the company. Could you tell us what these skills are valued most at Airbus at the moment?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question, and it was interesting to hear Alex earlier when you mentioned that you did the wrong degree. I'd like to think that there's no such thing as doing the wrong degree, because most things can be applied to somewhere in space or aerospace, as you've demonstrated. But if you want to do some more research on this, in 2020 there was a space sector skills survey done, and that had input from a lot of the big space companies about where their needs are. And the usual suspects that come to the top are things like coding, cyber, electronics, digital design, and those things. But that doesn't mean that they're the only things. There's lots and lots of things we need in the aerospace sector in the UK and globally. But when we think about apprenticeships, we talk about things being technical and engineering. But actually, if I put my Airbus hat on and take myself away from defence and space, Airbus as an aerospace company as a whole has apprenticeships in business and finance, and they have craft and customer services apprenticeships and digital technology and solutions degree apprenticeships. So they're not just about engineering and technical jobs. There's lots of other things as well. So really, my advice is that I'm not going to give you a specific thing that you should study to get into a STEM career or a STEM something in aerospace. Is that go and find something you enjoy doing. And if you can find something you enjoy doing and make that your job later, that's great. So find something you enjoy doing, something you're passionate about, and then see if you can find a way to fit that into the aerospace sector or space.
Great, thank you very much for that answer. So my next question is going to be for everyone, and we'll go around each of you. So at what point did you decide to pursue a career in the space industry? And we start with Alia.
So when I was a child, as early as I can remember, I wanted to be an astronaut. And that dream has never left me, really, but I didn't really see a particular path to get there. And so instead, I just kept my options open, did broad sciences, engineering, and then later, I guess about a year and a half ago, again, I realized that, no, I'm going to go for this. I have to go for it, otherwise I'm going to regret it. Which is a point at which I thought, okay, what do I really need for this? What is the industry looking for? Do I need experience? Do I need a course in it? And yeah, so went back and got experience in at university and at Aerospace, and went from there. Yeah.
Great, thank you very much. Let's go to Alex next.
So for me, it was in 2017. I was doing a completely different job that I wasn't particularly enjoying, and I didn't really feel like it suited my skill set particularly well. I was still friends with the chap I was talking about earlier, and was in contact with him and said, I'm looking for a new job. And he let me know of a job that had just come up at his company that he was working at, which was in the space industry. By that point, he'd moved from ESTEC to a company just outside Oxford. So yeah, got in contact with him, and I thought, yeah, I'm gonna go for this job. Actually, I think it suits me quite well. And then the process after that was 2 interviews and 3 rounds of testing that I had to do through online and other medium. And yeah, once they offered me the job, it was a no-brainer for me. I thought, I've got to go for this. Something I've really enjoyed since I was such a small child. I thought, got to go for it.
Yes, I definitely think once you've got an opportunity, you definitely have to go for it. And let's go to Chris.
Yeah. So it's going to be a bit of a running theme here, I think, in that, I was always definitely interested in space, and especially science and space, really, from a young age. Posters of the solar system up, and the moon landings and things just really kind of captivate. I was just obsessed with them, really, as a child. But then I always kind of thought, well, are there opportunities in the UK? Everything you hear, obviously, it was US or Russia, basically. So yeah, I thought, well, it's not possible, really, is it? So yeah, so then was very lucky when I was doing my A levels. So through my school, I managed to apply for a trip to the States. It was to visit NASA and other space companies, essentially over in the States, in Texas and Florida. Got to meet basically scientists and engineers from all different kind of backgrounds, working on different things in the space sector, really. And yeah, I think that was the point where I thought, what, it's not just a crazy childhood dream. There's got to be something in the UK. So that really kind of made me think, this has got to be it. So yeah, so then kind of decided to do engineering as what I enjoyed as well. And then kind of researching organizations, trying to build up an awareness of the companies that were around. So through one of those, when I was doing some research, really, it was through a careers fair, actually. And I just stumbled across a guy who seemed pretty interesting at an STFC stall, and was talking to him. So yeah, he sounded interesting. So then basically through that, managed to get a couple of internships sorted throughout my degree, and then applied full time, and here we go. And that guy's, he's still my manager today. So yeah, it's a pretty strange story, that one. So yeah, it's quite nice to look back. So yeah, that's really good. That trip, I think, was pretty influential in me wanting to pursue the career that I'm doing today.
Great, thank you very much. And finally, let's go to John.
So I think I'm really lucky. I think I've never really aspired to be an astronaut. It's never something that's really crossed my mind. I think I've always aspired to be an engineer. And so my engineering career started for the MOD. I did 10 years working for the UK MOD, but that ended up with me working in Washington, DC. And with access to all the museums and things around there, I suddenly realized that this space thing was really getting me excited, particularly the hardware, the spacecraft that take humans out into space. And coming back from Washington, where do you go with a civil service career? Not very exciting. So I was really fortunate that where I lived in the UK before I left for Washington, there was this company called Aerospace. I was aware of it, and I tentatively put in a CV, and they offered me a job. So I came back from America all excited about space and joined a space company, which was fantastic. And I guess my passion has been for engineering in space, not just human spaceflight, but any engineering in space. But my first job was working on an anchor station, a ground station in Abu Dhabi. And I really realized I'd made the right choice when we went to watch the satellite called Yarsat launch live on an Ariane rocket with our customer in Abu Dhabi. And then when it was all successfully launched, we all jumped in a car and drove out to the anchor station to see if we could track this satellite that had just been launched from French Guiana. And seeing all the smiling faces and the people around me and all the excitement in the room, it suddenly made me realize that this was a great place to be and a great team to be in and a great sector to work in. So that excitement has carried me through the last 10 years. And, I like to think that I can use my excitement and my passion to bring the next generation of people, because, I've had 20 years of engineering and I've done some really exciting things, but the things we're going to do in the future are even more exciting. And, we need more people. We need more young people to be inspired to come and join space and aerospace as a whole.
That's great. Thank you so much, John. I think it's you've hit the nail on the head there when describing. I do feel giddy like a child actually working in this industry. I think it's one of those things. My little sister is absolutely obsessed with space, and it's living my dream, living her dream. It really is amazing to be in this industry. So John, we'll start with you first. If you could have given yourself one piece of advice to the person you were 5, 10, 20 years ago, knowing what you know now, what would that advice be?
You know what, I find this question quite difficult because I'm very, I don't like to have too much in terms of a plan. I've found myself where I am from taking opportunities, saying yes to opportunities, doing exciting things, saying yes to things that might be a bit scary but exciting. So I guess I'm quite lucky. I guess the advice I would give myself would be to take better care of my teeth, because that's actually, when you get to my age, that's actually something that's quite important you can do something about when you're young. But I guess in terms of this forum, if you find something you're excited by doing, if you find something that really gets you energized, find something that you really want to go and research more, then look at it and see what you can do in terms of careers, and don't write yourself off, and don't let anybody else write yourself off and tell you that that's not for you. Because if it gets you excited, then go and look at it and go for it, and don't let anybody else tell you that there's no jobs for you in space or there's no jobs for you in engineering in the UK, because there absolutely are.
That's great, John. Thank you so much. And then we'll also pose the same question to Alex.
Yeah, so my answer is incredibly similar to John's, actually. My response would absolutely be go for it and keep my mind and options open. It's so easy to think, no, it's not for me, it's not right, but absolutely go for it. It's such a great opportunity. A quarter of absolutely everything in space was built in the UK. So there are so many opportunities for you to come and join the space industry in the UK and really make a huge difference. I was obviously very nervous about joining the space industry, but best decision of my life.
Great, thank you very much. And this next question is going to be for Chris. So what is one instance in which you overcame a particular obstacle, either in your project work or in the entry into the industry?
Question, that one. I think probably the one that comes to mind really for me was actually the very, very first project I got put on when I joined Aerospace. So without going into too much of the technical details, really, it was basically we had on this project, it was the R&D project I was talking about earlier. We wanted to basically implement this new technology that basically none of us had ever used before. Kind of joining as a fresh graduate, and then all of a sudden thinking, why on earth are you giving me this job? I've only just joined. But the point was that nobody else knew either, and it was a bit daunting, really. Of, oh my gosh, like how if nobody around me knows this is familiar with it, then how on earth am I going to do it myself? It was pretty much that was quite daunting to start with, but I had some support from colleagues around me. They pointed me in the right directions and said, hey, go and here's some resources to go and learn from here, and they pointed me towards the right information sources, which kind of got me on my way. And then when the end of the development came along, I was telling everybody basically about what this new technology was and how we need to use it and how to implement it. And it was really kind of drawing upon, in those kind of scenarios, you have to get really resourceful in terms of hunting for information. And, it also included kind of hunting externally from Aerospace as well, and finding people outside of the organization who knew about this stuff and kind of probing them and really picking their brains. I think that was a pretty challenging task, but it ended up going well, and I was pretty proud of it. So yeah, be resourceful is the take-home message. And there's lots of information out there, and you just got to know where to find it. So, yeah.
Thank you, Chris. Alia, this next question is for you. So what has been your favourite project or piece of work that you've partaken in?
So I'd say the experience I've managed to get on a couple of the Falcon rockets at SpaceX, hands-on with the rockets, with the technicians and stuff, really like learning the equipment inside and outside, crawling into the rockets, into the engines, you know, being able to see exactly what makes up that rocket, learning all of the different components and figuring out, you know, which bits are crucial, how they link to the control software, what they're going to be used for in flight, and then also being able to see those rockets in test fire, seeing all of the 9 engines on the first stage roar into life and watch that, and haven't yet had a rocket go to the launch site yet, but looking forward to that.
Thank you for that, Alia. I've got to ask, have you had an encounter with Elon Musk yet?
No, but occasionally an email pops up that's sent to all employees with Elon Musk, and it's you get a little buzz every time you see his name in your inbox.
That's great. Right, our next question is going to be for John. Is there a piece of evolving technology within your department that you are particularly looking forward to? If so, what is it?
Oh gosh, that's a good question. Within my department, probably not. The one thing I'm really excited about, actually, and it's not wholly and solely an Airbus Defence and Space project, is something which is one of my other passions with outreach, is something called AstroPi. You might be familiar that when Tim Peake went up to the space station, he took 2 Raspberry Pi computers with a sense hat attached, and there was a coding competition for young people to write code, and their code went up to space and ran on these 2 Raspberry Pi computers. Well, actually, we've got this year, we've just qualified for flights 2 new AstroPi computers with brand new Raspberry Pis, Raspberry Pi 4s, new hardware, and they're going to go up on a Dragon, so fingers crossed, Alia, later this year. So I'm really excited to get this new hardware in space and release it to young people to write their code and send their code to space, because that's so exciting, and I get excited about being able to be in my position to be able to make these projects happen and help these projects happen, but also to see the young people who come to us and they apply for an apprenticeship and they say, oh, I sent my code to space, and they're really excited and passionate about it as well. So it really drives me and it really charges my batteries to see that these opportunities are out there for young people to get excited about space. And it's not just about going and doing a PhD, it's about things you can do right now that get you excited about space. So I'm really looking forward to AstroPi 2.
That's great, John. Thank you very much for that. Alex, do you have any specific goals or milestones that you're hoping to hit within your career? And what steps are you taking to achieve these?
Yeah, so I've actually just hit one of my career goals in this year, actually, which has been to be a consortium product assurance manager. So I'm the consortium product assurance manager for the aerial mission, which we were talking about a little bit earlier. So that's an infrared telescope that looks at exoplanets of nearby solar systems. It's going to launch in 2029. So it's my job to make sure that every instrument that's on there is going to do its job when we're up in space. It's a really exciting mission. I really enjoy working on it. In terms of my next goal, I would love to run my own space company. This is obviously a long-term goal down the road. So yeah, I think that'll be really exciting. So for me, the key steps that I'm working on and the skill sets that I'm working on are being able to develop my business acumen. So at the moment, I'm writing a business case for Aerospace to take on some new elements. So yeah, it's really exciting. We're trying to create a lab that can basically detect contamination in a much better way, a much quicker way. So yeah, really exciting.
Great, that's great to hear. And quickly, there's the last few minutes to get any questions in that you want to ask our panel. So another question for Chris. Projects tend to have long lifespans from the concept through to the design and finally to launch. Have you been involved in a project which has been launched? Can you describe how you felt in that moment if you have?
For me personally, no, not yet. So as you were saying, Kate, space projects do take a number of years really to get anything to launch. And part of it depends on the luck of when you join the organisation. So I was saying earlier, my first project was a ground-based R&D type project. So it's only really the last couple of years I've been working on something that will be flying. So while I haven't personally been involved with something that's launched yet, so just before all of this lockdowns and everything started, and we thought, what's a coronavirus? There was the launch of Solar Orbiter. So Aerospace was responsible for one of the instruments that actually went onto the SPICE instrument. And yeah, so when Solar Orbiter had launched, there was an event at RAL where we could all sit in the same room together and have a mass party, basically, where we watched the launch back and learned more about the kind of science and engineering behind Solar Orbiter, and specifically SPICE, because it was our contribution. And that kind of general kind of coming together and the excitement and the buzz around that launch was, even as somebody who wasn't directly involved in that mission, it was really, really exciting to get involved with. So in terms of me personally, probably the first, well, fingers crossed all goes well, the first project that I'll be working on that will launch will be Punch. So that's currently scheduled for late 2023, I think is the date. So yeah, we're still a couple of years off, but yeah, fingers crossed all goes well. And yeah, I'll be looking forward to it very, very much.
That's great. Thank you so much, Chris. So we've got a question from the Q&A box for John. So Rose asks, she's applying to do a GNC internship with Airbus this year, and she's curious what sort of personal or soft skills would be most useful in that position.
Good question, Rose. How long have I got?
Just a minute or so.
Okay. So quickly, soft skills. People talk a lot about soft skills, but for me, team working is important. But everybody knows team working is important. Communication as well. So your ability to tell people about what you're doing and tell people the exciting things you're doing, and don't underestimate the power of a mock interview or having someone you know or someone you don't know give you a quick mock interview, because it will tell you so much about yourself that you don't want to find out in your real interview maybe later in the year. So your ability to communicate will come across strongly in an interview. So work on those skills and be able to communicate. So I do say to a lot of people, it's no good being the best engineer or scientist you in the world if you can't tell anybody about what you're doing verbally and in writing. So if you work on those skills, they will definitely show in an interview.
Great, thank you very much, John. That was a really good piece of advice for everyone. So this brings us towards the end of our panel session now. So I'd like to thank all the panel guests that we had. We had John, Alia, Chris, and Alex, and also Taya and myself as hosts. So we're going to take a break now for about 15 minutes, and then we'll be back for our final session of talks.